Good afternoon. My name is Christoph Glaser, and it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to today's discussion on the topic Sports Quo Vadis, reimagining the sports in the COVID-19 times. And it's great to hear that we are followed by 1.2 million viewers around the globe. And it's great that Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar, that you are hosting us today with this discussion. We are very honored and privileged. And I would like to introduce the panel. We have with us today the Minister of Sports from Colombia, His Excellency Ernesto Lucena Barrero. Buenos dias, pleasure to have you.
Hello.
We have with us Mr. Christoph Daun, international famous sports manager and TV commentator from Germany. Hello, Christoph.
Grüezi, Christoph.
We have from the United States, from the Aspen Institute, one of the world leading think tanks, the Executive Director for Sports and Society Programs, Mr. Tom Ferry. Tom, can you hear us? They must be tuning in. We have from Switzerland, at the moment in France, the former Wimbledon winner, the former coach of Steffi Graf, and now the coach of the Swiss Tennis Fed Cup team, Mr. Heinz Günther. Heinz, welcome.
Nice to see you all online.
And we have a great Norwegian delegation. We have Miss Anja Hammerseng Edin, a former professional handpipe player and winner of the bronze medal in handball, and now coach and author. Anja, great to have you with us.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi.
Hi. And the former head of the Olympic Committee in Norway, Mr. Inge Andersen, who is now leading an agency for leadership in Norway. Inge, great to have you.
Hello, Gurudev, and hello, Christoph. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
And Mr. Peter Marty, the CEO of Marty Communication and advisory board member of the World Forum for Ethics in Business.
Hello. I hope you understand me.
Yes.
Yes.
And Mr. Joe Leinen, the board member of the World Forum for Ethics in Business and former member of the European Parliament. Joe, good to have you. So I think the current pandemic has turned the world in sports literally upside down. Competitions have been cancelled, leagues are addressed or even called off. Training facilities are closed and athletes keep fit at home. And while the economic losses for sports are surely apparent, it's not just the financial loss which matters and the physical health which is at loss, but it's the psychological consequences which are quite important. Athletes whose lives were completely geared to the competition and who have been training for years towards big competitions face greater negative emotion and distress and a lack of purpose. Now, I think we have seen again and again that transformational processes often arise out and in the midst of huge crises. And so we want to ask today, what has and can the sport learn from this crisis? And how can we ensure that the beauty and purity is preserved and that the excesses of competitive sports can be better managed? So today, we want to put into perspective the current impact of the pandemic on professionals, on amateurs in sports, the lesson learned, and what really must change post-COVID-19 so that we can have a more ethical, healthy, and humane world of sports. So, Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar, you have worked for more than 15 years for ethics in business, and since many years you're holding conferences on ethics in sports. I remember you having said that unfortunately many a times sports is led like wars, and wars have become the new sports. And I think we live in a time in which many feel that this is almost a war scenario. So what in these times can the sport contribute for us to overcome the crisis?
Sports is an activity which keeps people busy, engaged, and keep their spirits uplifted. When they come back from home, their whole mind is focused on sports, especially in the season. Everybody is talking. It just unites people in very unique way. But now with the COVID-19, this activity of human race has been robbed off. It's taken away. Though it's a temporary phase, but people feel it a big vacuum. They're unable to practice sports, they're unable to watch sports, so they're unable to connect to their role models, heroes. Then they find a big vacuum happening in their own life, and this can lead to sort of depression. This is what we see happening. When you are not able to go out, when you are not able to go on holidays, and the economy is getting bad to worse, and suddenly you find the only solace you have, that sports or other entertainment is also blocked. At this situation, I think it's very important to reassure our population that all will be well. We will all get back to normal. This is just a passing phase. This message we need to give loud and clear, number one. Second is, this is the time to reflect about oneself, one's values. How much do I care for values in society? How much I care for environment? How much I honor others' feelings and emotions? How much I am compassionate with others. These are certain things that beckon us to think in this trying time. So there are some good things about this also. See how nature is rejuvenating itself. Suddenly the ozone hole is getting cleaned up. We see dolphins coming in Mumbai, and we see, weather conditions are getting better. Somehow nature is trying to recuperate itself. So with all this, I would say, though physically you are unable to go out and play games, but please do not lose your sportive spirit. At home, keep that sportive spirit, and I would recommend everyone to go inward and meditate and get rid of these two important problems that we face. One is aggression, another is depression. So our youth can really benefit from this lockdown. They can improve their talents, they can learn more, and wait for brighter days in the future. Yeah, Glaza.
Thank you, Gurudev. And we know that you have been very instrumental to bring peace to the great nation of Colombia a couple of years ago. And it's great we have His Excellency Ernesto Lucena Barrero with us. He has been a national champion in squash and is now leading the sports ministry. So Ernesto, how has the COVID-19 pandemic impact the sports scene in Latin America and in particular in Colombia? And how do you cope with it? Your Excellency, can you hear us?
No, we can.
We cannot hear you. You would need to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
The host, okay.
Super.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I would like to salute everybody in the panel. Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Guru, and all the members of the panel. I would like to give a very warm thank to a Congress member of Colombia who got me invited into this forum. He's Juan Carlos Lozada. a person who has worked for peace in Colombia, who has worked for environment in Colombia, and right now is one of the, I would say, one of the young promoters of sports also in our country. COVID has hit Colombia very hard. I would say from economic perspective, obviously we have been held by the lockdown, and people right now are trying to change the mindset. And specifically in sports, I would have to say now that we are trying to change the view of competition into values in sports. Right now, we're not worried about medals. We're not worried about podiums. We're not worried about who's better, who's first, who's second. We have shifted the view, and it's one of the things I've been trying to do for a couple of years, is how the Ministry of Sports can go in a transverse mode to education, to security, and to health. And basically what I would have to say is that right now, all of the sports industry has to shift into values. I would have to say that what Guru said is very important. We need our brains to understand that the world is changing, that competition is right now not on the first page, it's cooperation. And Colombia has lived through many years a conflict, a war that none of us wanted to be in. And I think that sports is one of the great instruments to help our children, to help the new generations understand the value of resilience, empathy, teamwork, and optimism. So right now, what I've been talking with Congress, what I've been talking with our president, and with many federations of the world, is that we need to understand that the new education system has to take sports into place, has to take the values of idols, positive idols that are in sport, like many of the people that are here in the panel. We need you to transform the world, not for competition right now, for education. And that's really what we're trying to do right now in Colombia. We're trying to make our Ministry of Sports much stronger through the development of new characteristics in the brains of youngsters.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And I'm dialing in from Switzerland. In Switzerland, one of the most popular sports is skiing, traditionally. And so it's an extra honor for me to have with us Ms. Sarah Lewis. She's the head of the Secretary General of the International Ski Federation. Now,
nice to be with you, everybody.
Great to have you. Now, we have read that as the head of the organization, you had to cancel almost 1,800 ski events around the world due to Corona. So how is the impact of the crisis on the ski world, and how do you handle it so far?
You're right. At the latter stages of the competition season in February and in March, it was necessary to cancel around 20% of the total annual competitions, including the highest level ones at World Cup level, and the organisers and the national associations whose events couldn't take place. They were very, very heavily hit, as this is a main source of their income. And we have really felt this impact very much throughout all levels of their activity. And this is what we're dealing with at the moment. The challenge is really the uncertainty of the outlook for sport to be able to plan and to have an indication of timings when a certain level of normalization can resume. The financial impact on sport, as in most other sectors, is absolutely huge. And the world economy plays a big role here. Many business areas who are contributing to sport, their partners and sponsors of it. But this all being said, what we are experiencing at the moment is a great buzz from the role that sport is playing in society as such, and His Excellency the Minister of Sport for Colombia has already given us that insight in their country, that the governments are prioritizing exercise as a key contributor to the welfare of the population. And within sports, we see this as a great opportunity for the future to expand its role with day-to-day life moving forwards. And competitions will be a stimulator and an inspiration for many persons to tune in and to say, I'd like to try that myself. So Ian, we're proactively involved, and we're going to take a leading role in this respect.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Now, apart from skiing here in Switzerland, we all love soccer. And one of the great idols in the soccer world when growing up for me was Mr. Christoph Daum, who as a manager has won 8 trophies with clubs from Germany, Turkey, and Austria. And Albert Einstein once famously said that relativity does apply to physics, but not to ethics. However, in today's sports scenario, I think it's very difficult to understand what is really ethical and what not. So it is with the soccer in Germany. This weekend, the soccer is starting again, while many businesses are still not operational. And there's a big discussion in Germany and in Switzerland whether Germany is treated too preferentially, while others say it's an important fun factor, it's important for society. So how do you see the situation, Christoph?
First of all, a very warm welcome to everybody. I think all of us learned a lot about pandemic problems, and we are still in this learning process. And in this situation, under these circumstances, the German Football League, the DFL, figured out so-called hygienic and infection protection concept to restart the Bundesliga. Only Bundesliga 1 and 2 is mentioned. That means the professional leagues. And they worked out a program where we really are reducing the risk of infections. Okay, we cannot exclude them, but it's a concept where other countries even asking now the German Football League how you prepare it, how it will work. Okay, that we do not know. And this concept was presented to medical experts, to politicians, and they had a clear look at it. They made a very intensive check-up, and then they decided, okay, this concept sounds reasonable, and we will start. But the restart is not a free ticket. It's, let me say, permission from match day to match day. We are under really great observation and control. And as the head of German Football League, Christian Seifert, said, if there will be any disadvantage for our society, we are really ready to stop immediately. Yeah, we only want to have this, I call it pilot project, because we have to work out concepts for the crisis we are facing right now. And okay, it's a very massive concept, and it's really with binding rules to all the players, to the staff members, and it's not in a sense, back to a normal way. No, it's a special way. It's not only a special way because we have no spectators. Yes, all the games are without spectators. And on the other hand, how the players and the staff and all the other people, there are around 200-300 people in the stadium, are under control. That is not normal. But here the Bundesliga has an advantage because the Bundesliga 1 and 2 have a fantastic healthcare concept, and the monitoring, the testing of every player happens nearly every day. Now we just add the corona testing, and that's not a big deal for the Bundesliga 1 and 2. But honestly, as I said it before, we do not know if it makes sense, if it will work. I know that in United States, the NBA was thinking about a restart. Premier League is thinking about a restart. A lot of other leagues and professional football or even other sports thinking about a restart. And now the German football league has a model where all the others can have a look, and we can gather informations, what's working, what's not working, what makes sense. And if we will see that any disadvantage will pop up, then we can stop immediately. But on the other hand, honestly, I can tell you, we know that football is not the center of life. We know that the health of every human being has absolutely priority, and we will act and behave always with this in our mind. But on the other hand, if we are speaking about mental things, then I can tell you that from the emotional side, a lot of people are waiting to see football, even it's just in TV. And that means we will have other discussions, not only about corona details or facts. No, we will speak now about a goal, winning or losing, or behavior of the players. That means from the emotional side, there will be maybe an advantage for the people. I do not know. I just guess it because I know if you are emotionally healthy, that means your immune system gets stronger, then this will maybe also become a protection for infection. So this emotional, this social aspect of the restart, maybe it's also working. We will see what's coming out. This concept is under observation, and we will gather results. Maybe we can use it for other sports. Maybe we can use it for other parts of our society. And therefore, I'm also looking forward, because it's a concept made in Germany, and hopefully this will be a very good new product made in Germany.
Thank you. Thank you. Surely it will be, and I can already feel your passion and love for the game, Christoph, very much so. Now, the tennis world, Heinz, has probably even a bigger crisis. It's the first time since the Second World War that the Wimbledon games will not be held, and Rafael Nadal, the world #2, has been quoted to say that he believes that in 2020 there will be no more competitive tennis sports. Now, while Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic do earn millions, and the crisis does not pose a financial issue, players ranked outside the top 200 in the world can hardly earn a living and are really threatened by the crisis. Heinz, do you see a systemic change needed in the tennis world? How do you assess the situation?
Well, tennis is really poorly equipped for this pandemic, probably worse than any other sports. And it's quite simple. If you look at where tennis is played, we're talking about professional tennis, we're talking about the ATP Tour. Football is relatively local. You have the Bundesliga that's played in Germany, even the Champions League is played in Europe. The only sport you can compare to tennis is golf. But then the PGA Tour, you have an American tour, you have a European tour, you have an Asian tour. Tennis is always global. And that means a lot of traveling, and that means a lot of problems when you have something like a pandemic like this. I mean, the ATP Tour is based on the idea that anyone that has a good enough ranking can play anywhere he likes, as long as he makes the cutoff. But this definitely will be challenged in these times. Imagine somebody comes from an area that the pandemic maybe is, at present expanding itself, and might have to go into quarantine to go somewhere, which is completely impossible. I mean, you can't put somebody like Zlatan now in Milan for 2 weeks in quarantine if he wants to play a tournament in Shanghai, for example. So, I mean, these are huge challenges for tennis. What I thought is interesting, one of the speakers mentioned, sports, how important it is for the well-being and everything. Actually, several did. And I wholeheartedly agree. The thing about professional sports, though, it's, completely different. The very best, as you mentioned, makes a lot of money and the other one doesn't. So people want to see records. They want to see winners. But winning has its price, which means that to be as good as these people are at what they're doing, they are focused single-mindedly on this task. So there's not so much room, for socializing with others and thinking about this and thinking about that, because in a sense, it's this single-minded focus that makes a lot of these athletes as good as they are. But tennis is really poorly equipped, and it might have to reorganize itself in more local areas, maybe a European tour and American tour, if this stays the way it is.
Thanks, Heinz. So I think maybe this break we are experiencing the sport is a good time to rethink, to reshape, and the leading institute is the Aspen Institute in that regard. The leading thinker of the institute is Tom Farrey. Tom, what we would like to hear from you is that you're leading so many conversations across all sections in the United States. What, in your view, is the next model of sports in the US post-COVID-19 world?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a real great pleasure to be here, Christoph, and this whole panel. Really such an honor. So thank you for inviting me. The next model for sports. So it's interesting in the United States. I mean, we're a large country. We have a very unique sports system. One, as some of you may know, we're one of the few nations in the world that does not have a ministry of sports to coordinate sport activity or even set an agenda for what makes sense in terms of child development or athletic development. There's a lot of money in this space. A lot of it's moving at cross purposes. And there's some benefits in that, and then that there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity, but there's also a lot of chaos as well. One of the more chaotic aspects of our sports system is that we have embraced at the youth level this manic race toward travel teams, sorting the weak from the strong at very early ages, starting when they're in first grade, 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds, holding tryouts and putting the best ones over here and then putting the rest of them over here. And those recreation environments often dissipate after a few years. We don't have the club structure that a lot of the world has to kind of continue participation into adulthood. And so these kids, traditionally the prevailing model has been one in which we kind of put the best kids on those teams and we load them up with lots of competition, year-round play, a lot of pressure. Some of them go on to play in college. Some of them go on to play in the pros. But a lot of them just don't make it. They either get burned out or they have overuse injuries, or they're just kind of pushed aside because they were not early bloomers or their family couldn't afford the club team environment. So we have recognized within our project at Aspen, Project Play is this thing we started 6-7 years ago to coordinate activity to fill this leadership void, that we have something of a dysfunctional system at best and a broken system at worst. And so the COVID crisis has really laid those gaps and deficits and fundamental flaws in our sports system laid them bare. We have no coordinated decision making. So, for instance, when the professional sports shut down and college sports shut down, well, the youth kept going because no one was telling them that they couldn't do this. And then they're the first to restart. We've already had like a organized baseball tournament in Missouri last week. Why? Because they could. Nobody's going to stop them from doing so. So I think there are these. It has laid bare the lack of governance that we have in this country and the need for better coordination and governance for the sake of public health, if nothing else, but also for children. So, but what I think it's also doing is it's showing that a lot of parents now are very scared to put their kids back into organized sports, and they also don't have the money to afford these travel teams that have come to dominate the system. So I think the model that is going to emerge from this inevitably is one that is more focused on local, affordable, high quality forms of play that allow a kid to play for more than a few years. That allow them to play at least into the teenage years. And that's going to require that we invest more in the park and recs departments, and that exist in every city in the U.S., more in the YMCAs, the places that have both the hardware and the software, meaning the facilities and the programming that can deliver these quality experiences at scale, as opposed to just catering to the elite kids. So there are going to be a number of adjustments that are going to have to go into that. There's going to be innovation, investment, and then just frankly, better governance. And so that's what we are going to do within our program. It's what people look to us to do, is to lead that conversation.
Thanks, Tom. So we can see this crisis also as a chance. I hear you saying for changes which are needed. Inge, you have been the head of the Olympic movement in Norway for more than a decade. You're now working in the field of leadership. So from a leadership perspective, what do you think the sport needs to look at?
So thank you for inviting me in. First of all, I think it's important to take a responsibility that sport is by far the biggest movement in the world. Everywhere in the world, they are playing soccer or doing a lot of sport, running, skiing, everything. So the sport leaders, the coaches, responsibility, because they can also show a way. And especially in these days when many countries are opening up, then the arena for children is an arena to learn how to treat each other. And it's also important, additionally, to take control. The leadership in a period when you have had this lockdown is, of course, different than it is in a normal situation. So you have to, as leader, to give really, really clear messages and how to run the whole game. But it gives also a lot of possibilities. In all crises, it's also a lot of possibilities. And I think here in Norway, we have been also been looking for all the possibilities. It is a period that you, as leader and coach, you have to work a lot with inspiration, with motivation. You have to reflect on a new situation, and you have to be creative. And in Norway, we are also, of course, so lucky that we have our nature. Yes, our cities, they have been locked down, but the nature is open. So for families in small groups, it has been important to still live in a holistic way, to use the nature, to still be active, but to be active in another way. And I'm totally agree with the Minister of Colombia. I think also for the elite sport, it has been to use the language of the art of living. I think for the elite sport, it has also been necessary to breathe some month, to take a rest and think about this industry that sometimes looks like quite crazy too. So to bring the sport back to basic, to ask the question, what is the most important of sport? That is fun, that is play, that is health, that is bringing people together. And out of that, you will also, so you have to get back the power, the inner power of sport and why we are doing sport.
Thanks, Inge. Anja, as a former professional handball player, as part of the Norwegian national team, you won the 2009 bronze medal. And you're now working as a coach for athletes. When you coach athletes through these difficult times, what do you focus on?
When I coach them right now, I focus on the things that's actually been said here. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here and for inviting me in. It's such an honor, so thank you. I think that we see that to a lot of athletes, they see themselves as high achievers. And for some athletes, they also think that this affects their whole identity. Like what they achieve equals their self-worth. And that right now, their achievements are taken away from them. So as athletes, we're really used to developing skills. Like if I lack some skills, I can just go to the gym or I can go to the arena and I can practice and then I'll get better. And that's kind of the way that we do things. So we know that we will get better when we practice. But when I was an athlete, I got to this point that I was feeling like it was never enough. I always needed more. I always wanted to do more, win more, be more. What?
I think that was. You could go, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that's where a lot of athletes are right now. They're always wanting more and achieving more. And so I think that you have a great point while saying that this was maybe a perfect break to just now take a break, realize what is success for you. I mean, what's really important. And when you do that, I think you will come to this point to see the true values of who you are and why you do what you do. And I got there myself as an athlete. I had to really dig deep and dive into the big question, like, wait a minute, if I could develop these skills, then how about I just develop the skill that really makes me feel good without achieving so much, just feeling at peace and at ease with who I am and without so much fear in my life. So I did meditation, I did Vipassana, silence retreat, and that really helped me. So then I figured out that I want to do this and I want to bring this out to the world and I want to help athletes and coach athletes in this way of thinking, because I think if you get there, if you really dig deep and you want to go be true to who you are and your own values and just be at peace, be free in your mind, explore the mind, then I think that you will really have the opportunity to live a great life. And you don't really need to win all of those gold medals to be there. You can always have that peace, and then you can still love what you do, but you don't have to do what you do because you want to feel love. That's
great. Thanks, Anja. And it's so interesting to hear that meditation has been instrumental for you on your journey. So Gurudev, Sri Ravi Shankar, it is today that so many top athletes are using meditation as a tool for well-being, but also to increase performance. We know that many tennis players like Novak Djokovic are doing it. The German soccer national team is doing it. Many Formula One players are using it to increase the focus. So I would like to ask you, Gurudev, what is it that makes meditation so important for sports performance? And how could that be maybe used more in future?
First of all, meditation increases our energy level. It provides us deeper rest than the deepest sleep. As the Medical Journal of America has published an article in 2018, They say even 2 months of regular practice of meditation can increase the gray matter in the brain and change the structure of the brain. So there are a number of research work which has happened in the field of meditation and its benefit physiologically. Psychologically, I would say it can keep the enthusiasm in a person and the presence of mind. This is something very important. You know, if you're thinking about the past, you are angry about the past, you are anxious about the future, you lose a lot of your energy. Meditation helps you to keep your mind in the presence, which is very much needed for any sports, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now, Peter, you and your team from Peter Martin Communications and the World Fund for Ethics in Business have used this break in sports to come up with an initiative, the United for Ethics in Sports initiative. Would you like to talk about that?
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. But let me start quickly with my expectations for the time after Corona, then I will switch quickly to the United of Sports idea. I think there is a chance to come back to the idea of sport after Corona or after COVID, and sport as a moving social interaction with more modesty, fairness, respect for players, and respect for spectators. Mindfulness and health, as well as self-organization, I think, are becoming key. More together than in a loud mass event. And this, I think, and I believe, and I'm convinced, is a big chance for this social media community we launched, the so-called United for Ethics in Sport community. This platform deals exclusively with the topic of ethics in sport. Now, why United for Ethics in Sport? I think the existing global sport federation organizations have a hard time dealing with ethics in sport. The main reason for this is that as a part of their association structures, this makes huge challenges for them. In other words, global associations, sports associations, cannot really control ethical behavior in certain countries. And therefore, for them, it's rather difficult to control ethical behavior. Now, ethics in sports begins at an early age, kids. And ethics in sport can therefore be only brought to life as a mass movement by athletes themselves, amateur and professional athletes. So amateur and professional athletes are invited to join the United for Ethics in Sports platform. Both amateur and professional athletes from all over the world can be part of this social media community. What is the benefit for the athletes? As a member of the United for Ethics community, by liking our Facebook page, you will have the following benefits. First of all, it's a worldwide network with athletes who share the same goal, which means more ethics in sports. Do something good and keep the sport clean. Then you will be invited for regional and global United Ethics in Sports events and initiatives. And I think if all the athletes, amateur or professional, are following the principles of United for Ethics in Sport, we will have done a big step forward in the future. And COVID-19 is a big chance. We have created this platform, obviously already last year, but we are launching it now. And I believe that this platform comes in the right time for amateur and professional athletes.
Thanks, Peter. Great initiative. We will now aim to do a second round. And in this second round, we'll look a little bit more personal in your whys for the sport and what have you learned from the sport personally, because all of you are just great athletes and representative of the sports. We'll take about 2 minutes per person for the answer so that we can be in time. And I would like to start with you, Excellency, the Minister of Sports from Colombia. And Shri Ravi Shankar has been quoted to say that if we could replace all the guns in the world by soccer balls or balls of other kinds, this would be a big progress, a big step to achieve peace on this planet. What role do you see the sports holds amongst the Colombian people? And is it indeed maybe a very important vehicle to bring sports and peace, bring peace to the society?
Thank you, Christoph. Yes, definitely. I think sports is the best vehicle right now a country like Colombia has to find peace, but something I think even more important, to find inner peace. Sometimes we're always talking about how others can achieve or perceive peace. And I think the best thing for the human race right now is to understand the value of the present moment. As Guru was saying, we're always worried about the future or maybe regretting the past. And I think what we can do right now as the leaders of sports, many of us that are right here in this panel, is understand that this coronavirus is here to send a bigger message to society. And that bigger message is that our idols, I repeat, we have positive idols. Most of them practice the real ethic in sports, but they have become addicted to competition. And when you become addicted to competition, you start struggling with your inner self. And this is not only true in sport, it is true in politics, it is true in businesses, it is true in entrepreneurship. And I think this moment is very important for Colombia, especially. And this message is I think, true for other countries, is how we can understand the real underlying message. We have to search for what I call the emotional medals, not the gold, bronze, or silver. We have to do a real introspection of societies. And that's why at the beginning I said that Ministry of Sports in many countries, or secretaries of sports in many countries, have to work through education. I think the private sector will find its way through innovation. There are a lot of things that are going to come out positive in the economic sector for sports. I think it's gonna happen. But we cannot forget the real message coronavirus brought to humankind. And that is that sports, health, mental health are here to make us understand that we have to become leaders in this new perspective. So that is my real message, Christoph, to all of us here, is understanding the role that right now sports have in society.
And that's so beautiful. Emotional medals. I think I will take that with me from today's discussion. And also how you speak about the importance of being in the present moment. Now, in preparation of today's discussion, I looked at the Wimbledon match Heinz Gündert played in 1985 when he won. And Heinz, I noted that when you served with match point, to win your first Wimbledon title, you actually managed to play an ace, something which is super difficult. So where did you take at that time your mental strength?
A lot of practice. Interestingly enough, being on a tennis court, and I guess when you're a professional athlete, everything becomes very intense. So I can still feel hitting that ball after so many years. And interesting enough, the second I made contact, I knew he was an ace prior to anyone else on that court. And, we had a lot of discussion about sports, and, what sports gave to me is moments like that. I got to know myself much, much better because of professional sports, not only, on a tennis court, but besides the tennis court. I know myself pretty well by now, because when you play professional sports, you go through a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of reflection in between matches, in between competitions, and so on and so forth. And I've been lucky to be able to play, coach, and now talk about sports. And I think it's terrific when people talk about, how professional sports should change and ethics and all that kind of things. That'd be fantastic if through Corona this will happen. But professional sports is basically a reflection of society. And today, the winner is celebrated, and you only win if you have singular focus on this. So if through Corona this changes to the point where to participate becomes more important again, I'm all for it.
Absolutely, absolutely, Heinz. Lots to learn from you for sure. Now, Sarah, as an athlete, you participated in the 1988 Olympic Games, and now you're serving your sport in the highest function. How did you, at that time, manage your mind? In ski, I think one mistake, one moment of not being present can cost the competition. How did you cope with that?
Well, this is what you're doing. Actually, you know, your mind is as an important part as the physical elements of the sport, and you have to train this. You have to make this an important part of replicating that competition pressure during your training and your preparations. And in fact, you posed another question to me, and I would just like to jump into that when it comes to my role in sport as well. And well, I've had the privilege, the opportunity to work all my life in sport. I was a very sporty child, and it's played a central role ever since. Athlete, team manager in the sports industry, within the National Association, and then working internationally since 25 years, technical function, and now a Secretary General of the largest international winter sports federation. And I always felt and feel it stronger and stronger now. And the situation through this COVID-19 pandemic has brought it out even more, that sport plays really an equaling role in the whole of society. It reaches out across all sectors, different ages, diverse participation. And on the sports field, everyone is equal. You know, as an athlete, even though I come from a non-traditional winter sports nation, Great Britain, nevertheless, I was equal with my counterparts from everywhere else in terms of what we were striving for excellent, for best results. And this is also what recreational sport is doing in terms of bringing together people who come from all different parts of society to share in their common interest. And yeah, this we're going to take forwards, there's no question, and communicate that message, because it has a big and important impact through sport for how it can influence and support society in a positive way.
Thanks, Sarah. Now, to all of us, we are running a little bit behind time. We have about 10 minutes to go, and want to ask a couple of more questions so we can just answer in a nutshell. All say this time needs a lot of resilience. And Christoph, you have shown so much resilience in your career. You have been celebrated as a hero in the German nation, and you had real lows where you were attacked by the media. So how were you able to bring up this resilience? What have you learned from that? What can we learn from you?
I think we have different parts of sports. Mostly I'm speaking about the professional part, because I worked more than 40 years in this professional part. But I remember very well that I started to play football because I had a big passion for football. I had an enthusiasm and I had a love for this sports. And then when I changed to the senior, to the professionals, it becomes more and more a business, a big sports industry. And hopefully, even we from the professional sector of sports will use this Corona crisis for a certain, let me say, self-reflection in the way of social responsibilities. with social responsibilities, I mean also ethical values like fairness, like transparency, like open communication, because a lot of things happening in the world of football where the normal people cannot understand. They will not follow, and we have to reconstruct things. Even I think a lot of clubs will face financial difficulties. They have to lower their costs. That means we have to think about the salary of the players. We have to think about the transfer fees. We have to think about the big commissions of all the managers, agents who are taking a lot of money out of this part. Okay, I think it's a chance for professional football to reorganize in a certain way. It will not completely change everything, but it's a moment of self-reflection and reconstruction, and it will not be the same the next years as it has been in the past. On the other hand, if we are speaking about the amateur sports, one of the much bigger community, okay, we have to get a I think we have seen even right now how important sports is for any society. It's vital for every society. It unites, and as we have heard it before, on the pitch, all the people are equal. And in football, I say always, it's not so important which passport you have, but it's important how you pass the ball. And therefore, I think we have to, in this area, we have to think more about the essential values of ethics in sports. And I think it was Gurudev who said it, and I will never forget this, what he said. I said, look, sports is like a picture. The business is a frame around the picture, but inside the picture, that is the love. That's a deeper understanding of sports activities. And I think during this time, we are reflecting more on essential things. And if I'm going now in parks and see people with bicycles, okay, for other countries it's maybe normal, but for Germany it's not so normal that we're becoming now a bicycle nation, or how people in groups are making jogging. So I think everybody understands the vital importance of sports in every society. And okay, we as Gurudev says, we have to take a deep breath, we have to smile, and we have to think positive, because every crisis will give chances to single individual, to every club, and to the whole society. Please let us use these chances.
Yes, absolutely, Christoph. Now, Tom, you are helping organizations to use the chance in the crisis. You're working with so many stakeholders. You advise them for short and midterm future goals in this crisis. What do you advise? What should they do? And you need to unmute.
Oh,
yeah. Perfect. You're on mute.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I mean, we talked a little bit earlier on this webinar about values, and that's what I'm encouraging people to do in the United States, is to realign our sports system with the values of health and inclusion, right? So competition is great. There are lots of reasons why we play sports in this country, and there's reasons why we construct our sports systems in the way that we do. I think the best future belongs to those sports systems that understand what is in the best interest of health, meaning public health broadly, but also individual health, physical and mental or otherwise, and are inclusive, formats that are not exclusive, that make room for anyone who wants to be physically active through sport at whatever age possible. And if we can do that, I think we can lift all boats. I don't think there's any loser if we go down that path. If we get every kid off the couch without running them into the ground and they have an experience where they've come to love sports. They've developed physical literacy. They have learned skills and connecting with their peers, skills that can be transferred to non-sport environments and build our society as citizens. I think that's a glorious future for sport. So I would encourage every entity out there. This is what we're doing in the U.S. as well, and it's sometimes a little more challenging here in part because it is so disjointed, and because the U.S. is so organized around the idea of competition, and sometimes even winning at all costs. That it's this values-based conversation can be a bit challenging. But there are a lot of people, certainly here as well, who very much understand this and would like the system to move in that direction. So once we can have some agreement around health and inclusion being the core principles of our sports system, then strategically and tactically, how do we put that in place? What are the mechanisms? What are the policies? What are the practices? What are the partnerships that will bring that to bear? Because it's really a matter of changing both structure and culture. I've learned a lot from traveling around the world, and Norway, Inge Anderson, who's on this webinar. It's the most amazing sports system in the world, and they reorganized it really 30 years ago and put a document called the Children's Rights in Sport at the core of their whole principle. And it's been very inspirational for me, and I do everything I can in this country to encourage stakeholders here to think about the Norwegian model without constantly saying Norway, Norway, Norway. But there are countries that have figured this out. And so let's pay attention to them. Let's learn from them, and let's build that into our own systems.
Thanks, Tom. Absolutely. And
yes, I had to leave, so I just take leave of you all, and wonderful being with you all. Please continue. I have another appointment, so I have to leave.